Hi. This morning I thought I'd talk about what uh, CBT actually is. In my office, I do some work in the NHS, and in my office I've got a huge whiteboard, and on the whiteboard I've got a list of things that I think that are really important to sort of understand about what's happening in a therapy or a counselling session. I mean, it is really psychoeducation CBT, and any kind of self-regulation is about noticing. So that's one of the first things that's on the board, is that you actually have to begin to notice what your experiences are. You know, if you do get anxious, then it's important to notice when that is more likely to happen, and when you begin to notice that, you can then prepare for that, or do something about it. Anyway, so I think that that's it. That's one of the first things, is if you're doing a form of CBT, and I'm not a big fan of fundamentalism in either therapy or anything else. So I think that if you're with a CBT practitioner, it's really helpful if they've got a bit of flexibility about what they can offer you. Anyhow, so noticing is the first thing, and what you're noticing are when you've got a kind of any kind of physical sensations, because your emotional state will already be telling your body, sending your body messages. So if your hands do get sweaty, or you're just kind of feeling a bit dread or something like that, then the body is messaging you, so pay attention. But if you don't pay attention to that, you get more and more in a pickle. So if you can pay attention, it's really important. So your emotions are also happening at the same time as your thoughts. You might have had a thought that triggers an emotion, and you're not really aware of it. So all of that stuff is really important to start paying attention to. And there will be themes. Everybody will have their own areas where one of them might be just kind of, when I'm walking across the car park to go into my work, I get a horrible feeling in the pit of my belly. Hello, paying attention. So that's one of the first things. Is also that when we do have a thought, the language that creates that thought is a choice. And that some of the work that we would do in the room is about how we language. So if you are somebody who is a dutiful person, and many of us have been brought up with, you're a good person if you do A, B, and C, you're a bad person if you do D, E, and F. So if most of us have got that in our backgrounds, so we have become dutiful. So we do lots of things, not because we want to do them or we'd like to do them, but because we have to, got to, ought to, should, must. So if you're using language that's what we call compulsion language, then it's just important to notice that, and then there's something that can be done about that. So language is really important. I've got 3 questions on my board, and that is when we're getting in a sort of state about things, our sense of reason kind of leaves the building, and we're in this kind of space of sometimes catastrophizing, sometimes just fantasizing, some magnifying things, or diminishing things, and so the brain is in a state of this means that, and it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily. Now it might, but you'd be pushed actually to make this means that a rule. So an example of that would be that if you if you buy your wife flowers on the way home from work, um, she might do a version of, oh, if he only buys me flowers from the garage, that means he doesn't love me. So this means that. So the garage flowers means he doesn't love me. And that is absolutely not the case. There's no evidence for that. It could be a whole host of other things. So the first question is, what else could this mean? what is going on? What else could this mean? And that's really important. There's loads of other examples of this means that, and you'll do it. Everybody has their own version of that. So pay attention to when you're doing that kind of stuff, because it's a downward spiral, which is really unhelpful to everybody, you and everybody around you. So think about that. So the second question is, what is realistic in this situation? You know, that you maybe think, oh, I've got to do this has to happen, that has to happen. And actually, what is realistic? If you're already feeling stressed or distressed, you know, just dial it back a bit and say, right, actually in this moment I can only manage this. So learning things like that about yourself, this is all about um self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is empowerment. I've talked about that before. So paying attention to what is realistic in this situation. So that second question. So, and the third question is, what can I do differently? Have I actually in this moment got the capability to do something differently? And one of the things that I always recommend, it's a really good thing to do, and it's called a power pause. Just pause, because most of us get into that kind of knee-jerk reaction. And when you're in a knee-jerk reaction, you're in the same sort of escalation as if you're having an anxiety attack. So you kind of feed the anxiety. But if you can pause, then it's like, oh, I'm giving my brain a moment here. I can do that. So that's really important. If nothing changes, nothing changes. That's what, when people go to therapy or counselling, there's no mystery about it. It's really about like anything else, you get what you put in. So if you're willing to actually kind of be radically honest and really do the work that you're being encouraged to do, then things will change, and they'll probably change quite quickly. So that's, if nothing changes, nothing changes. The two other things that I've got on the board are silence is not golden and ignorance is not bliss. And those are really important when you're actually in therapy. Is if you are noticing that you're withholding, that you're kind of fearful of talking about certain things, which you probably are, and that's okay. The silence is will be interpreted by the person that you're with in the room, so that your therapist or your counselor, whatever they're calling themselves, that there's something difficult happening, or there's resistance, and that means that's a place where there's some work to be done. So silence isn't golden. It's a helpful tool to kind of acknowledge that something else is going on. And ignorance isn't bliss. Well, we live in a world of Google, AI. There's no reason to be ignorant about stuff. If you need to find out a bit more, then it'll take you 2 minutes to do so. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Okay.